you're familiar with this as an agency owner. I would wake up and I'd be like, okay, well, time to work, crack my knuckles. And then I would just pull up my email and say, okay, whatever emergencies in here is my most important thing and is my priority for the day. And the majority of them were actually kind of my fault. And they're not my fault because I created the emergency. They were my fault because I created the situation and the lack of boundaries with my clients that allowed them to think that anything they thought was an emergency was an emergency. The right person is 100 times more valuable than an okay fit person. And so I took a bunch of time investing in that up front. And now I have the rewards where I have this team. They're all insanely competent. They know my clients. They're really good. The number one hack that works for me that I can recommend, and listen, everyone's different, but for me, I do not eat until I'm done work.
All right, Rich, let's kick off, man.
Beautiful.
First, man, I want to say I've loved a lot of your content for the last couple of months, right? I've really, really enjoyed it. And there's been different aspects that I've just learned so much from. And in the lead up to this session, I always do a lot of research, right? And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go back through your Work Less manifesto, which I think is a good overarching theme for today to walk through. And I was like, I'm going to implement these ideas and see what I can do. So as I mentioned to you, like my company, like there's a lot of work involved, a lot of work and everything involved. And I started to apply your principles of really cutting out distractions. And that means just closing down WhatsApp, Slack, all this kind of stuff, only focusing on like the top 80%, and also really just trying to remove anything I don't need. So just saying no a lot more. And I was able to bring my like 12-hour, 15-hour work days genuinely down to starting at 5 a.m. because I like starting early, and probably finishing at around 4 p.m. with going to the gym in the
Just a casual
going to
11
the gym,
hours.
but with going to the gym in the middle of the day. Sorry, so that splits
Okay,
up
that
the day,
counts.
right?
Okay, that's good.
So I would say I eliminated nearly 50% of my work from just
Nice.
following your guide for about a week. So it's been incredibly helpful. So I can't imagine how it's affected you and other people, but that's going to be a great kind of segue into the manifesto for today as a point.
Nice. Yeah, man. What I've noticed is that I've worked with a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs, things like that. And by default, we tend to have this like mindset that there will always be time for everything, right? And that when we don't set any boundaries or containers around the time that we work, you think, oh, I can work anytime, and you just end up working every time, right? 24/7. And I was totally guilty of that. I mean, the reason that I got into this stuff was because I was really solving my own problem that I had created, years back. I've been running a design agency for over a decade now. And yeah, I hit the same brick wall that, you kind of probably feel like you're up against right now, where at that point in my business, I was really maxed out on time and I was maxed out on money. So there wasn't any more time left in the week. For me, it was like 70, 80-hour weeks. And I felt like I had hit a plateau on income because I couldn't do any more client fulfillment, right? There was no time to bring in any more business because I was fully stretched thin. So this was about like 5, 6 years ago. And I had this like epiphany that how I was spending my time was not working. And I was actually on vacation and I picked up a book that I'm sure many of your listeners have read. Maybe you've read it, 4 Hour Workweek by Tim Ferris. It's a classic. Highly recommend it if you haven't read it. And there were just some principles that were shared in that book that I didn't even know you could do. Right. Like, I think the biggest things that I didn't really understand, I had the option to do as a business owner, were things like saying no, setting boundaries with my clients, right? Like, the one that really broke my brain was like that I don't have to check my email every 5 minutes throughout the entire day, and that you could literally just check your email like 2 or 3 times a day and batch it and still get the same results. And it was just these kinds of like insights that I just took it and ran with. And over the next couple of years, I really went from the point of like total burnout to basically, tripling or quadrupling my income, going up to 500K a year and working like 10, 15 hours a week running this agency. And all that is kind of what led me to start to share the stuff online and put together the Work Less manifesto and just how I think about running a small business.
There's a lot of in that, because the reason why I think you grew so quickly is because a lot of people are in my bracket, right? They feel overwhelmed, they feel overburdened, and they feel like it's normal. But of course, it's not normal to be doing these things. That if you want to even achieve like a lot of stuff, you don't have to sacrifice everything to do it. Of course, you need to be focused, but as to your point, you need to be very tailored focus. And the 4 hour work week is great. It's been years since I read it, maybe like 6, 7 years or something. But I think Tim Ferriss mentioned that he checked emails like once a week. Was it something like that he brought it down to?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I listen, I think there's levels to this
Yeah,
stuff,
of course, of
and
course.
it's a spectrum. So if Tim's at one a week, that's pretty good. I've been hearing about some people that are at the point where they're like, I just don't check email anymore, right? Someone else checks my
Okay.
email, and if the people that need to contact me, they have my phone number. And
Yeah.
I think there's always levels of delegation and letting go to this stuff. But I think what
Hmm.
most people find is that like the real work that matters in their business doesn't happen in their email. The email is just a
Mm.
tool and we treat it as a to-do list. And I know I was so guilty of that. I would wake up in the morning, and maybe you're familiar with this as an agency owner. I would wake up and I'd be like, "Okay, well, time to work." Crack my knuckles, and then I would just pull up my email and say, "Okay, whatever emergencies in here is my most important thing and is my priority for the day." As opposed to like, oh, well, I actually own a business and maybe I should spend my time working on my business. And part of it is what's in my inbox, but part of it is owning the business. And I think that was kind of the
100%.
key lesson, and starting to realize also like most emergencies aren't really emergencies. And the majority of them were actually kind of my fault. And they're not my fault because I created the emergency. They were my fault because I created the situation and the lack of boundaries with my clients that allowed them to think that anything they thought was an emergency was an emergency.
And the emergencies of like, a broken system, whether it's design or for me, it could be podcasting, is down to systematizing, documenting, putting actual the pillars in place, which I want to get into as well, right? Like how do we build these actual systems, which I think is going to be a huge part. So getting into the work less manifesto, which I think is, I don't know, where did you get the idea from at first? What was the idea?
Um, so okay, I'll just give you a little bit of background about how I ended up on the internet because
Mm.
it's kind of unusual. I For most people that found me online, it's kind of like I appeared out of nowhere because I basically have been existing as a business owner for over a decade in the real world, or the world of,
Doing stuff.
handshaking and meetings and all of that stuff. And, I grew my entire agency this whole time, even up to 500K, without social media and without the internet, and basically just based on, referrals, relationships, and just like doing quality work over a long period of time. So when I got onto the internet, I had not used social media for business at all. And to this day, I don't get clients for my agency from this stuff that I do, right? I treat them as
Mhm.
two separate businesses. I'm not trying to say, hey, while you're at it, come, to my design agency, because one, probably not a good fit for the agency. We could talk about the business model later. But
Mhm.
the point of the story is that I was working with a business coach, and maybe you've seen him. He's actually has a really big YouTube channel. His name's Chris Do from the future. He's on
He's
YouTube. Maybe
he's
you've
coming
heard
on
of
my
him.
show soon.
Oh, sweet. Okay. Well, yeah.
Mm.
So Chris was and is my business coach. So I actually hired him to help me. And when I initially started working with him, I had a handful of questions about my agency related to like the kind of final pieces that I needed to figure out around delegation and project management and stuff like that. And I went to the source. And as an aside, I feel like I got a really good deal on working with Chris, because when I was working with him, he was only charging only a meager $1,000 an hour for his coaching services. He's now charging $5,000 an hour. So I bought an 8 coaching package. I was like, listen, dude, I've got money. Let me just lock you in. And I feel like I kind of got 40 grand worth of coaching for 8. So that was
Mm.
helpful. Anyway, Chris and I worked together. The agency stuff, we did about 3 sessions before it became pretty clear that I was making a lot of money and not working a lot of hours. And, there was time to figure out what's next? And I was like, I kind of want to like start either writing or talking about my philosophy around work and how I got into this. And he was like, all right, what you need to do is get out a piece of paper and start writing down everything that you think about work, and really kind of make it into a manifesto and talk about how you work, how you approach your business, what are the principles behind it, and then kind of start sharing that stuff online. So the only reason that I am even on this podcast today is because Christo was like, hey, maybe you should start talking about this stuff online. And there was
Mm.
no, I wasn't really planning to like put together a course or anything like that. Like it was an experiment, and it ended up resonating with people a lot faster than I thought it would. And then all this other stuff has kind of come from that.
That shows like the power of having the people in your network, right? That you can leverage those influences. Like you paid for the mentorship, and it worked out perfectly well in that regard, right? It's probably been more than 40K you've gotten back in coaching. You've probably gotten much more
Oh
as
yeah,
a result, right?
well, what's crazy is the first session that we did together. I talk about this, so this meta. I have a podcast as well. It's not an
Yeah.
interview podcast. It's kind of just me talking, but in my podcast, I actually recently put out 2 episodes, and they're called Lessons from $8,000 of Coaching with Chris Do. And I actually
Mhm.
went back and, we record all the sessions, and I took really detailed notes, and I went through the process of looking at, the last 2 years of coaching sessions happening, every couple of months, and distilled all the insights and lessons that I learned into those 2 episodes. And what I found was, in the first lesson that we did, Chris actually taught me something and gave me a referral that ended up saving my business probably somewhere between 60 and 100 grand in that first year that we were working together. So I made money, I profited off of the first transaction. And I think that's really the
100%.
beauty of, finding the right mentor and, someone who's in alignment with what you're doing.
That's so interesting, man. It's funny because in some regards he was very different than you, and then obviously then other aspects, then he brought you up from like the content perspective, for instance, the sharing the stories, and then like now there's so many similarities between you, but it's almost as if like that evolution happened over time, which is like that's exactly what the idea of a mentor, right? They're bringing you up and they're uplifting you. All right, people, we're just going to take one short little break for a little update about Podcast University. So if you enjoy podcasts like this and you want to start your own podcast, head down to the links down below to Podcast University. This is a learning platform that I've built to help people like you build, launch, and scale your own podcast. I wasted many years doing this, making it all up as I go. So I put everything together in a very seamless and easy to follow course for you guys to follow and just learn exactly how to do it. So if you want to bypass a lot of the mess with your podcast, check out the links down below to Podcast University, and it will show you exactly how to launch and scale your own podcast. So getting into those points, right? So I work on the right thing. I work on the right thing, not anything. Now that's so valuable because of the fact that we chase our heels, we put out the next fire. How do you determine what are the right things to work on, especially when you're like starting a business or just getting off the ground in the first couple of years?
Sure. Okay. So when you're first starting your business, honestly, the more I think about this, because when people come to me, more often than not, they are trying to go from like 10 to 100, not, 0 to 1 or 1 to 10. I
Yeah.
tend to work with established business owners because most of the problems that I solve come with growing a business. So, in a lot of ways, there's no substitute or shortcut in the beginning for
Yeah.
just screwing up and sucking. I think there are certain level of reps that you need to do. You need to be bad. You need to learn things. Like there are ways to speed up the process and accelerate it. But I had a whole 5 year like dark ages of my business where like I didn't, so this was basically from 2011 to 2016. And did I do that math right? Yeah, 2011 to 2016, where the internet was not what it is today. The amount of resources that are available now for business owners online is insane. It's like a gold mine. But in 2011, it wasn't really like that. There was some tiny things, but I was like on my own and just learning the hard way and learning really slowly and
Mm.
screwing up. So I think early on, there's no substitute for that. But thinking about working on the right thing versus anything, I think we can break it up into 2 parts. Start with anything. like we were talking about at the beginning of this episode, what most people do when they sit down at their desk is they open up their email or they open up social media or they find the first task that seems relatively easy and satisfying to complete. And they just go and do that. And then their entire
Mhm.
day becomes this string of not meaningless, but dopamine inducing small tasks that are not really moving the needle on what matters in their business. And when I say focus on the right thing, not, everything or anything, I'm really asking you as a business owner to take the time to, focus on tasks, at least one or two a day, that are really going to move the needle. And the
Mhm.
way that I think about it, what should you do as a business owner is there's kind of two tasks in your business. I think about it like maintenance tasks and growth tasks. And everyone in a business, if you own a small business or, solopreneur or whatever, you have these both types of tasks that you need to do. So maintenance tasks are your day-to-day work that are going to allow your business to run at the current level of income and input. So when I say income, that's how much money you're making. Input is the amount of hours that you're working. These tasks are required, right? There, even for this business, the one that I have now, there's a certain amount of maintenance tasks that I have to do every week in order to keep the wheels rolling, right? I need to teach the cohort when it comes up 3 times a year. I need to create the content, my weekly email. I need to record the podcast, schedule the social media posts. And I have a lot of systems built around these maintenance tasks, but like they just need to happen. And there's
Yeah.
no way around that. And what I see most business owners do is their schedule is 90% maintenance tasks. So they say
Mhm.
yes to so many different things, right? They're like, I've got the podcast and the YouTube channel and the streetwear brand and like yoga studio, whatever, right? They have a million things and they're just trying to keep the wheels spinning on all these different things. And as a result, they really stay at the same level for a really long time because there's no time for growth tasks.
Mhm.
And growth tasks are the opposite side of the coin. And I think about these like tasks that are actually going to create growth in your income or tasks that will decrease your input. So the amount of hours that you need to work. And growth tasks are different, right? They are the types of things that actually build a business and move the needle. And you need to take time to do them. And examples would be as simple as strategy for your business. What are your actual
Yeah.
goals? What's important? Delegating, just straight up eliminating things, saying, hey, this isn't important, we're going to stop doing it as a policy. Automation, building leverage. And what I find is that the people that really do well figure out how to spend less than 50% of their time on maintenance tasks. And the other 50% or more is spent on these growth tasks that really move the needle in the business and push things forward. Things like,
Mhm.
building systems. Um,
The less
so
sexy stuff.
what you think that's
The
sexy?
l No,
Because
the less sexy
less
stuff.
sexy. Yeah, 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 yeah.
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 Um,
So there's
to
like,
to
and I also think of them like business owner tasks are the
Mhm.
growth tasks, and employee tasks are the maintenance tasks. And for better or worse, they both happen. You have to
Yeah.
do them. There's no way around it. It doesn't matter who you are. And there's better maintenance tasks, right? There's more leverage maintenance tasks, but if there are always going to be things that, like, if you just stop doing them completely, eventually things are going to go down.
Alex Hormozy uploaded a video recently called, "How to Get So Rich You Question the Meaning of Money," and he references focus in it. And to your point about the cheap dopamine, we can all put up that tweet or that reel or that post on LinkedIn, and sure, yeah, it drives like engagement, whatever. But that's not what's actually building like the business. He was like, if you focus on the really, really boring stuff, so let's say the systems or the sales team, instead of you doing the sales, you work your ass off to get the best sales team, and then to train them and do like script reviews, do all this kind of stuff over time. So then you have this huge opportunity for you to grow your business, right? And his goals could be different than your goals for sure, right? But it's about building out those actual systems versus all the stuff that gives you the cheap dopamine and all the the basic shit, right? So the stuff that makes you feel like you're making a lot of moves, but you're feeling busy, not actually being busy. I think there's a lot of parallels there about that, having that extreme focus and setting the boundaries, right? Um, on actually being able to spend money and use your time effectively, you have a bunch of freelancers or contractors who work, in and around your business. How have you designed, like, let's say, your design agency in such a way that you're able to leverage that and be able to remove yourself from it, because you are the expert and you've 13 years experience in design. Do you ever feel like you're being pushed into the business to do a lot of these tasks whereby you're not working on the business anymore?
Yeah, great question. I think it's helpful to explain the structure of my agency, and then it allows the delegation game plan to make sense.
Mhm.
A lot of times when people hear, "Oh, you've got a $500,000 design agency, that must be a ton of work, and you must be like really busy all the time, and there must be a ton of stuff going on." And the way that I approach the business is I've really set a cap on how big I want this business to be. And I have some kind of guide rails around how I want to scale the business. And I think if you want to work less and you want a business like mine, because let's be clear, not everyone wants a business like mine. And when I work with people, I tell them up front, you can design any kind of business you want. If you want to work, less than 5 hours a day, that's cool. If you want to work 10 hours a day, that's cool too. But I just want you to actually, have your actions be in alignment with what you want and what your goal is. And I think that these tools and these frameworks work for people that are either trying to invest their free time and their productivity back into their business, or invest it
Mhm.
into their freedom and having a life outside of business. Now, I'm more on the freedom side of things, but you need to know this stuff either way if if you want to grow. So the constraints that I set around my agency were, I set a minimum rate. So for my agency, that is $60,000 a year. And that's either going to be a monthly retainer of $5,000 a month over 12 months, or a one big project of 60K or more, or a combination of the two. So something like, a $30,000 project plus 2,500 a month. And as a result, I have scaled my business by increasing price instead of increasing the amount of clients that I service. So
Mhm.
over the last 10 years, rather than follow the instinct that many, agency owners and business people get sucked into, which is we'll scale by getting more customers. I want to scale by having higher prices and working with the same customers longer. And as a
Mm.
result, I'm at $500,000 a year, but I'm only working with 6 to 9, maybe 10 clients
That's
total
awesome.
a year. And as a result, you get a ton of really incredible benefits from working with the same clients over and over, because there's a massive, massive cost associated with bringing on new clients and also with losing clients. Because when I talk to
Mhm.
agency owners that have like 50, 100, 200 clients, their biggest problem is like, Jesus, like I'm onboarding 24/7. I'm losing clients all the time. I'm training my team. We have to learn the business of, each client one at a time. And instead, if you have 5 clients or 10 clients, you get the economies of scale of being able to work with them over a long period of time. And as a result, your team knows your clients and you know the type of projects that you're working on. So, like, if you were to ask me, okay, Rich, for this X client, I could tell you what their entire yearly plan, goals, schedule, milestones, everything that's coming up off the top of my head, because I'm not keeping track of 10 million clients. I'm only keeping track of a
Mm.
small group. So when you say, okay, how did you get to $500,000 a year? It's not that
Mhm.
many clients, and they're all just on monthly retainers or big projects. And if I have like $100,000 website project that we do in a year, plus a couple of retainer clients that we've been working with for many years, 4, 5, 6, it's just not that complicated. And there
100%.
is a way to run your business that is not complicated. Most people just don't see it. And
Mhm.
that makes it easy to delegate, because when I show up to work with the clients, I'm responsible for 3 things. There's a million different tasks that I can do in my business. We are like full service, which means that any kind of creative need that the client has, we're going to be able to do for them. The way that we pitch clients is I call it, a $200,000 a year art director on your staff for 60K, you know, and it's everything that you possibly need: video, animation, design, branding, strategy, marketing, communication, all under one roof. And
Hmm.
I'm really only responsible for three things. I'm responsible for managing the clients, responsible for strategy, which is honestly where the clients get the most value. One thing my coach
100%.
Chris Do says all the time is, the strategy is what the client pays for. The design is like the party favors or the gift bag. It's the implementation, right? The thing that is a commodity is the implementation and, the graphics or the branding or whatever. And the strategy is where the actual value is created. So it's
Hmm.
client management, strategy, and then high level design. So really just like the top of the funnel. I will be hands on. And then I have a team of like 10 to 15 trusted freelancers who I've been working with for years. I've gone through a long process of vetting and I've worked with a ton. I think the biggest freelancer hack or contractor hack I can give people is, if you're not having good luck with it, you're not doing enough interviews and you're not doing enough reps with
Yeah.
finding the right people. Because if you've never found the right freelancer, it's like the gates of heaven open. It's like the right person is 100 times more valuable than an okay fit person. And so I took a
100%.
bunch of time investing in that up front. And now I have the rewards where I have this team. They're all insanely competent. They know my clients. They're really good. And as a result, I've got this business where we serve clients at a high level and there's not that many of them. And I have no desire to make it much bigger than how it currently is.
All right, guys, one short little update for Voix. I want to give a short little overview about my own company, my media company called Voix. So, if you are a company or you are an enterprise looking to grow your brand and looking to grow your podcast, feel free to reach out to work with us at Voix. What we do is a fully fledged end-to-end management of your podcast. We take care of the strategy, the consulting, we take care of the growth, the management, we take care of all the editing, all the boring stuff so you can focus on creating good podcasts and create and growing your brand. If you want to grow your podcast and get to new users, if you want to grow your business, generate more revenue and all that good stuff, check out the links down below to Voix. You can follow through to schedule a call with our team, or else you can fill out the application form to see if you qualify to work with us. Thank you.
I absolutely love that, man. Really love it because I feel like that the agency, where agencies can fall down on is the fact that they're going for more and more and more and more and more. And it could be some of the courses, right? Some of the OG like marketing courses are trying to get you to focus on sales and marketing, bringing people in. And like cost of acquisition as well can be just so crazy, right? That getting a new client is just so costly that it might cost you 20,000 to acquire them because you're running ads for so many months, okay? And then it's so difficult to fulfill them. Whereas I've done something, I guess, something quite similar where we've a long-term contract, anything up to 18 months, right? And as a result, it's easier to walk through this and delegate it and walk through it. But I guess for you, you got to the next level whereby you really do have the systems and the team in place for them to run it autonomously. And you remind me very similar of Tim Stoddard as well, um, who has his Stodsy internet marketing. And I went through his course actually, and he breaks it up really nicely. He was like, you have like 5 different buckets. You have sales and marketing, accounting, fulfillment, and I think it's a client success, and you should only be on one side, which is like sales and marketing, doing the strategy work, and then everything else you should be hiring. And he's a fantastic quote. It's every soul should have a role. So you should hire into those
Yeah.
positions, but they should only do one thing. If you're asking someone to do design and all this stuff, it just doesn't work, right? They have to be narrowly focused on that. So especially within what so you mentioned that you do a lot of different creative work. How do you build the systems? Like what's happening in the back end? Do you operate on Slack? Do you operate through like Zapier automations? How do you work that in the back end?
Yeah. So there's a couple things going on. Number one is when you only have like 6 to 10 clients that you're working with a year, it makes it really easy to do project management and to have systems and SOPs. Like, when we talked about the agencies that are like, I want 50 clients or I want 100 clients or 200 clients, then you need like bulletproof crazy SOPs for every process, right? You want to automate like the contract getting sent and the welcome message and, the next steps and uploading everything to the client's Dropbox and all that stuff, right? For
Yep.
me, it's not as big of an issue. I'll probably onboard 2 clients a year and we have SOPs for it, but you can really give them that personal attention when you first bring them on. And, a good fit client for me is going to be someone who works with us for over a year. So I'm happy to say no to a client if they're like, listen, I really just have this one little tiny project and there's nothing else I have planned. That's not a fit. So part of only serving a small group of clients a year is you're leaving money on the table 100%. And you have to be fine with that, knowing that you want your best fit clients and you want to over deliver for them and not worry about anything else. So the systems outside of fulfillment, so just everything around communication, and like, client success and, all the other accounting, they're pretty automated. We do a client portal in Notion, which allows clients to communicate back and forth with us. Everything that we do is asynchronous. We try to keep it to one meeting a week, which is another hack. So I schedule all the client meetings one day a week, and
Mhm.
they're all batched in a row, and the clients have the opportunity to come or cancel it. But the idea is that once a week for 30 minutes or so, we can get together and talk about whatever needs to be discussed. The project that's coming up, the schedule, and that just provides a standing touch point that then also allows me to have the rest of the time to work efficiently and do deep work and actually get the client stuff done. So rather than having like ad hoc meetings where it's just like, oh, when I think of something, I send you an email and then we book a call, I find it's actually more efficient to have standing regular meetings because then emergencies magically just like don't happen because there's constant communication. All right. So for fulfillment for my agency, I do things a little bit differently. There's kind of two schools of thoughts on this because where I feel like one of my core competencies is is client management and the relationship, and because the strategy is such an important component of the value that we provide, I insulate my freelancers and contractors 100% from the client. They're not on client calls. They are not working directly with the client. And I think that really benefits them in the long run because they're not dealing with like crazy requests. They don't have to be like, oh my God, I just got an email from the client at 2 a.m. Should I answer it? Like, why aren't they contacting Rich? They just asked me for an edit that's like we didn't talk about, all the stuff. So there is a firewall between the freelancers and the clients, and everyone I've worked with frankly is much happier with that thing because they only deal with me. And we do everything in Notion 100% asynchronously in my agency. So I probably have not had a freelancer business meeting like on Zoom to discuss a project in over a year. We do everything via Loom videos and in Notion, and it's a really simple process. It's not that complicated because the unlock is that when you work with a team for a really long period of time, they start to understand everything that's going on. So I'm
Mm.
not bringing people up to speed constantly. Like an example would be I have a freelancer who's a designer, a graphic designer, and she's been working with some of my clients on their projects for years. So when the next project comes in, she already knows what the brand is, what the brief is, what their strategy is, what the assets look like, because she probably already made some of them. Or maybe it's a project that happens once a year. And she's like, oh, I remember doing this last year. I'll start from the file that we built last time. So rather than like having to constantly replace people and train people, I find that the long-term relationships, both on the client side and on the freelancer side, just make the fulfillment delegation process really, really smooth.
I love that, man. And I feel like that you're personally positioned personally too. Like you have the relationships to be able to communicate that really well between your team and then give them the success. Like let them learn, let them adapt, and then keep them in the company, keep them in the organization. And then you can manage the relationship side of things of the client, which is fantastic. You have to balance and act between the two and you're not being bombarded, right? I want to switch gears into more the personal side of things. So
Mhm.
you are a big dude on tracking your time, and you've been able to analyze your time
efficiency, I guess, over the long run. I've never done this. I've seen a lot of people mention this previously. How do you go about tracking your time, and kind of what benefit have you seen, even personally or even like scientifically? Because I know you do a lot of research into some research papers around productivity in general too.
Yeah, man. I think honestly, time tracking, if you own a business, there's no excuse to not track your time. As an entrepreneur, your time is your most valuable asset, right? It's even more valuable than money. It is the one thing that you have that you can personally apply to your business in order to move the needle forward. So when I hear people that are like, yeah, I like worked 100 hours last week and I don't even know what the hell I did all week and I feel like nothing got done. I'm like, okay, well, you need to start with clarity about what the hell it is that you're actually doing with your time. So I started tracking my time formally probably over 5 years ago, and I've been doing it every day since then in my business. So to be clear, on a daily basis, I do not track my personal time when I'm not working on my business. I am not like I think one of the big misunderstandings that people have about productivity in general is it's about fitting more shit into your day and just cramming as much as possible. And for me, like the definition that I like to use, which I got from Twitter, I can't remember. So whoever said this, you're awesome. I'm going to paraphrase it, so I don't think it's a direct quote, but for me, productivity is about getting the outcome that you want. And if you get it, you're productive. And if you don't, you're not. And that really removes the pressure to fit everything in and to be super efficient and to also be busy all the time. So I'm ruthless with my time when it comes to work. And then when that turns off, it's like a totally different thing. I have hobbies. I like to just go hiking or hang out or whatever. I'm like the work part is dialed in and really kind of compartmentalized and structured. And then when that stops, I don't feel like I need to track my time and like, track every area of my life outside of that, which is different from a lot of productivity people. But
Of
anyway, back to
course.
time tracking. The
Hmm.
tool that I love to use is called Toggle, Toggl. I think they have a suite of products, but the time tracking piece of it is called Toggle Track. That's the piece of software that I've been using for 5 years. And when I sit down to work, I basically have Toggle open. It's like probably my most used tab on my computer. And I just mark whatever task that I'm doing and I run the time tracking. And the beauty of this is it allows me to identify, like we talked about in the beginning of this conversation, what types of tasks am I doing? How much time am I spending on those maintenance tasks, the things that just have to get done, and how much time am I spending on, the growth tasks, the things that are going to build leverage and actually move the needle and move the ball forward. And if you track your time for a week or 2 weeks, you're going to find out a lot of disturbing truths about what actually goes on versus the story we tell ourselves about what's going on. And even now, like I'll look back at some weeks and be like, hey, there's like a lot of room for improvement here in terms of, what do I say yes to? How do I spend my time? What could I be delegating that I'm not willing to let go of? And honestly, I think time tracking is like the number one entrepreneur hack. And people will say, oh my God, it's so time consuming. It's really hard. It's not. I I promise it's not. It's a skill. And once you get good at it, you will never even think about it again. I don't even think about the time tracking now. And the beauty of using a tool like Toggle is you can get reports. So at the end of the week, you can pull up your Toggle, like let's say, and you can see, okay, so for me, I'll just pull up mine right now. This week, let's see. Monday, I worked 3 hours and 53 minutes. Tuesday, I worked 3 hours and 1 minute. And yesterday, I worked 5 hours and 36 minutes, which was an
What the
above
hell?
average day. Most days for me, I'm under 5, probably somewhere between 4 and 5. And I try to keep that ratio to like 3 to 4 hours of deep work, really kind of focused creative stuff, either like really important client work or, deep content work, strategy, things like that. And then I need about an hour, 30 minutes to an hour to just take care of like the admin of running two businesses. The shit that just happens, emails,
Yeah.
team management, delegation, social media, like that kind of stuff. And
Mhm.
that's how you work, 4 or 5 hours a day.
How do you manage? So you're probably familiar with context switching, the concept of moving between different tasks.
Yeah.
And of course, for you now at this point, you wouldn't have the element. You sit down, you might do like content, and you might do like accounting or whatever that thing that you need done is going to be dialed in. But if you're using that tool like Toggle, how do you deal with context switching in that context? This obviously helps to remove it, but how would you track something like that if you're moving between things?
Yeah, I mean, the idea is that the most important things, the big stuff, are going to take place in large chunks of time. I think for
Yeah.
the most part, the stuff that really moves the needle are going to be done in increments of hours, not in 5 to 10 minute. So when I talked about like the difference between the time spent doing deep work, that might be a couple of projects. So it could be an hour of writing. It could be an hour of strategy or creation. It could be an hour of high level design for a client, and then I have the admin time. And the admin time is basically where all the context switching intensive tiny tasks take place. So what most people do is they sprinkle those tasks throughout the entire day. And they're like, hey, I'm working on, writing a blog post or, doing some like important deep work. But what they don't realize is that every 5 minutes they check their phone,
Yeah.
or every 10 minutes they check their email, or they get distracted and they realize, oh, I need to pay that invoice, or oh, this important Slack message just came in for my team member and I got to answer it now. um, all that stuff gets done in a batch, and, one period where it's like, okay, and then we just go down the list and you just crank it out. And the deep work time is sacred. There is nothing else that
Mhm.
is happening during the deep work time. So the phone is not in sight, it's on the ground, flips upside down for me. And, I often use a tool that I recommend to people called Freedom. I don't know if you've heard of this one
Mm.
before. It's a distraction
Mhm.
blocking app. There's a million of them out there. They all do different things. The two that I use often are Freedom, which is freedom.to, and that blocks distracting apps. And I keep my deep work block locked down. So all the things that I like to go to bring me away from the work, YouTube, Gmail, Instagram, whatever it is. Everyone has those sites that they're like, all right, this is hard. I'm gonna go over there. And then I also use a tool for my inbox that stops messages from coming in until I'm ready to check it. And there's two that you can use. There's one called Boomerang, and there's another called Inbox When Ready. And the idea there is that if you end up on your inbox by accident, you don't get tempted by the wave of incoming messages. So when it's time to check the messages for me, I've got this rule that I'm like, every message gets dealt with. You know, when I go down the list,
Mm.
they're either, you know, handled by a team member, um, you know, what I have like words for them: reply, automate, reply, archive, okay, delete. Those are the three
Mm.
that I try to like handle so I can get to inbox zero at the end. And obviously at this point, like I've got multiple inboxes going. So I've got my personal, and then my team handles my course email support
Mhm.
box. And then my agency has its own set of emails.
I think that's the next step that I want to get to is with the checking out Toggle and Freedom, and
You
that's where it's
should.
dragging. That's what's
Just
holding
do
me back, right? A
Toggle.
small
I
bit.
mean, I don't know. Like, start with one thing. I think the
Of
biggest
course,
mistake that people make is that they hear
is
a
they
bunch
go
of
all in.
really good ideas and they're like, I'm
Yeah,
going to do all of them. And the key is that these things are habits, right? And
yeah.
I'm sure probably you've either heard it referenced or you've read Atomic Habits.
I've
And
read it, of
yeah,
course.
yeah.
I've actually put my phone. So I'm a small dude. I'm like 5'7" on a good day, and I put my phone on the top of my kitchen. So I need a chair. I need to stand. I need to stand on like the counter, and then I need to actually get my phone. So I put it up there deliberately. But of course, like the reason where I would fall down is my laptop, and because we do a lot of content, I would be like checking content on YouTube,
for like a client, and then I would see like fucking a podcast, and I would like click on that. Does that make sense? I
Oh
would get
yeah,
pulled in, or we'd be reviewing content on LinkedIn, like performance on LinkedIn, and I would see someone else's post. Or does that make sense? For me, it's like it's the workflow. It's actually the UX of like what's happening on my laptop is actually pulling me in. So that's why it's for me. It's less like the phone or like I'll give you an example. I know this is not like the best for like your morning routine, but I work in a dark room in the morning. When I get up and I work in a dark room, and as a result, I'm quite dialed in. But it's just the fact that on my laptop, this is where I fall down on, right? And that's what's dragging me down. It's not the extra things out in the world. Does that make sense?
totally, totally. I'll give you one other tool since we're talking tools. So I don't know what web browser you currently use, but I use this one. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called Arc, ARC. Have you heard of
No,
this?
no, I'm
So
using Chrome.
what? Chrome. All right.
Yeah.
I recommend checking out Arc, and your listeners may like it as well. It's an alternative web browser that's relatively new, and I've switched over to it. And most of the people that I tell about, they love it and they switch to it. One of the benefits of Arc is it has this, among a lot of other things that are much better for productivity, is they have this tool called boosts. And what these boosts are is it basically allows you to like customize web pages and zap different elements of it to remove them completely. So I'll give you an example. You go to youtube.com in Arc and you create a boost. And you can go in and you can remove the recommended video tabs. You can remove the suggestions. You can remove the comments. So, like the way that I have my YouTube set up, if I go to youtube.com, all I see is a bar at the top and nothing else. I've removed all the other stuff. And when I open up a video, I don't see the right hand side recommended section. I don't see the comment section below it. All it is just the video and the description and the title bar.
Oh
And
my god.
you can set this up with like all your sites. So I have like a little bit of a similar setup for like Twitter, but honestly, my biggest like social media hack is just logging out. Like
Yeah.
that's probably the easiest one. But sometimes it sucks. Sometimes you need these things for work,
Yeah,
and
that's my
then
trouble, right? That's the
they
issue.
like, ruin your focus. So I don't know. They're all workarounds. Unfortunately, these
Yeah,
tools are all designed to take your time, and you got
of
to just
course.
like decide when it's okay and when it's
Mhm.
not.
100%. One thing that strikes me just about speaking to you is like you're super relaxed and like you speak really well. You're really relaxed. I can see that like you have a good sense of like fulfillment and joy, and but you work hard in what you do, right? And what I'd like to dig into is like the hard work element. So what I love from some of your content was hard work equals success, and that's like a common lie that people will tell is that how hard you work is successful. I'd love for you to explain the Lionel Messi example, which I think is literally incredible.
Yeah,
That's one of the best things I've seen. I know it wasn't from you directly, but when I went through a lot of your content, I saw it. I was like, that is literally incredible. Could you explain that because that's amazing?
100%, 100%. Yeah, I think the biggest misconception people have, and the reason that they have it, is because of the world of the 9 to 5. In the 9 to 5 world, it's really hard to divorce the amount of hours that you worked from what you get, because if you're getting paid by the hour, that's the direct thing, right? The longer you sit at your desk or the longer you sit behind the counter, the more money that you make. And for business owners, it's completely different. The amount of hours has nothing to do, very little to do, with the amount of output that you get at the end of the day. For the quote that I use is from this book called Free Time. And it's like when you have a small business, there's nowhere to hide. The work that you're doing has to work towards the goal that you want. It is not enough to just sit at your desk and work all day long. So I think the Lionel Messi example is so perfect. And yeah, I didn't come up with this, but I do talk about this. If you go to my YouTube channel, I don't really have a lot of videos on there. That's actually just a workshop recording that I put up, but you can look at the example. But basically, so Lionel Messi is arguably the best footballer or soccer player in the world. I'm not here to debate number one, number two, number three. That is especially as an American, well outside of my competence. But I will say that many people think he is the best football player in the world. And what's interesting about him is that they did an analysis of how many miles players walk on the pitch, on the field over the course of a game or they run, and how much time they spend actually sprinting and actually moving. And what they found was compared to other players and other forwards, even some of the top tier ones, Lionel Messi barely moved. He spent very little time actually running on the field. And what he understood was he has some of the best game sense of any player in the world. So his understanding of how people move and how to create space and where to position himself is significantly more important than how much time you spend running back and forth on the field looking like you're trying hard and looking like you're busy. So what they did when they kind of analyzed all his games, what they realized like he understands that there are hot spots and there are positions on the field where you're supposed to be as the forward in order to create opportunities. And rather than running around, he spends most of his time focused on creating open space and positioning himself in these hot spots, and he'll just walk. And what you realize is that this dude is like barely moving compared to anyone else on the field, and yet he's the best player of all time. And the lesson that we can all learn from this is that what you do is much, 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 much more important than how much you do. We love to signal to people that we're really busy and that we're doing a lot of stuff. But before you can even think about applying duration and length and effort, you need to spend time thinking about how am I actually using my time? And right, that goes right back into what we were talking about at the very beginning. What is the most important thing that I should be focusing on? And yeah, that's just such a perfect example. And it really blows people's minds when they hear about it.
It's amazing because what's funny there are some like critics in the football space that would say, "Oh, he is lazy." Like that's actually been some a statement that he doesn't get back. He's not a team player. He doesn't do all these different things. And there's a part in that video whereby the other guy just runs past him with the ball, right? And you would have seen people arguments, but those people are not looking at the broader context. That this dude is a killer. He's scoring what like sixty
What's his
percent
job,
of burst.
right?
Yeah,
What is his
yeah.
job? That is the perfect thing. And you ask yourself that about your business. What is my
What's your
actual
job?
job as a business owner? It's probably to
Mm,
make money and to improve my life. Those are, for most people, that's their top goals. Help people, that can be another one. But for him, his goal is to win games by scoring goals. And sure, he didn't chase that ball back, but if he chased the ball back, that could actually take him out of the position where he needs to be in order to do his actual job. So I think that's the lesson
100%.
there.
It's amazing, man. It's amazing. I want to ask you about the direction. So you kind of made a reference towards it there, but direction is more important than speed. So again, kind of going back to the beginning, like how do you determine that direction? Like where are you finding that? Because speed is less, more output, go at it 100% all the time, which I definitely fell into at times where, a month of this work, I'm exhausted at the end of it. But then now I kind of know that where it's most important, to your point with the Messi example, is bringing in opportunity, sparking conversations, kicking off more conversations, bringing in more leads, and closing more deals. That's generally what helps me the most, right? Helps business the most. So, how do you think about direction from that perspective as someone who's like a business owner or looking to build or scale a business?
I think in terms, one of the things that I see people ignore more often than they should is the data that's right in front of them. And, the example that you gave, you're talking about what works in your business. One example that I have that I see a lot is people will have like, I'll ask them, so, okay, where does most of your business come from? Where do you find your best clients? And especially if they have a service business, um, more often than not, they're like, yeah, my best clients come from referrals from my best clients. And they're like 90+% of the time, it comes from referrals. And then we look at what they're spending their time doing, and they are tunneled in on a content strategy where their goal is to get clients via social media. And then I'll ask them, how many clients did you get this year from social media? And they're like, two. I'm like, okay, well, we have
Mm.
some pieces of data here, and we're applying our effort towards the wrong thing. Imagine if you spent all that time towards creating a system for getting more referrals, or for, providing better customer service to your clients, and you said, fuck social media. Like, let's not even post on it at all. I've built an entire business that most people would be very happy with without one social media post. So the things that we think are required are not necessarily the things that move the needle in our business. And the mistake that we make is there are things that are providing the vast majority of the value. Some of the tasks that we do are worth 1,000 times, checking your email or something like that.
Yeah.
And yet we know it, but we don't say, maybe I should do a whole lot more of that and stop doing everything else. Like, I mean, I'm guilty of this too. The one of the things that I noticed myself doing with social media content, for instance, was like, I would have a video, for instance, go viral, and I would be like, that was cool. Hope that happens again. Instead of being like, what was it about that video that made that good?
Yeah.
How can I create 10 more versions of that same video that I can post over
Mm.
the next 10 months that are basically the same thing, so that I can replicate that success and quadruple down on it? And so often we see success and we go, that's cool. I hope that happens again. Instead of getting
So
the
true,
signal
man.
and going with it.
Man, it's so fucking true. It's like that is, as you said, you can deconstruct that one thing, and that could build your entire business, right? Is that one change to your offer, as you mentioned earlier, but the strategy component, it's a big part of our business too, right? The strategy to consulting, that's huge to increase the LTV. If you were focusing mainly on that, which you obviously do, that creates a value. Or looking at the viral posts, looking at those different components. But we get caught up on other things, and I would really ask you off that is like, why do we? Because I definitely have those tendencies too, right? Is that maybe like it's obviously a bias and perspective, but it's like we are attaching our identity to previous activities that we thought were right at that moment, but they're obviously not effective. So
Honestly,
why aren't we
dude,
learning?
it's a good question, and I don't have a good answer. And I know there probably is an answer out there for why we do it. I've noticed the pattern because I see it a lot, especially with the people that like take my course, or that I've worked with, or just like other people in my network that I talk to about, our businesses, is that it happens really, really frequently. But like, why do we do that? I don't know. I have no idea. If I had an answer, I would tell you.
100%. It just seems like this stuff just repeats on loop, right?
Yep.
History doesn't repeat, it rhymes, right? So I want to look into, just before we finish up, on some of like this scientific evidence about like less work. So you mentioned a lot about how, diminishing margin returns in terms of productivity, and we can definitely see that in 9 to 5. So when I was working in finance, my God, like people would be at a desk like 16, 18 hours a day. They would come in at 5 a.m. before the trading floor would open, and they're there at 10 o'clock at night, like zombies, right? So, like literal zombies. So, can you kind of speak about how like that would work, and how should we structure our days as a result?
Yeah, totally. So listen, the data is really, really clear on how much deep work we can actually do in a day. And deep work is really focused, strategic, 100% laser focused actions. So there's a great book. I don't know if you've read it. It's called Deep Work. It's by Cal Newport. He's written a bunch of really good books that have been super influential to me. But I really like Deep Work. And he makes the argument in this book that based on all the research, we're really only good for about 4 to 5 hours of highly focused deep work. And the example that I always give people is, think about if you were to sit down and write, and you just had a blank page, and you were like, how much work can I actually do before my brain breaks? And, you know, 99.9% of people, after 4 to 5 hours, there's nothing left. You might sit there and stare at a blank screen. You might, put out some terrible work, but all the great writers, they were really only working for like 3 to 5 hours a day for the most part. Um,
Mhm.
Now, there are other tasks that you can do that don't require as much of your brain that you could fill up your time with. But for me, I found that what I talked about, and I teach people this, is I work the 5 hour day, which is 4 hours of deep work, 1 hour of admin, give or take. Sometimes I only do 3 hours of deep work, 1 hour of admin or 30 minutes of admin. It just depends on what I got going on. And then I let it go, because most people, the way that they work is they work like you talked about in finance, right? They work until their battery is at zero. And
Mm.
then they go home. And what they don't realize is that we're humans, right? We need time to rest and recharge. We're biological entities, right? We're not robots. We're not machines. We're not, cogs in a factory. And these people that work 18 hours, they come to work the next day and their work is dog shit because their
100%.
brain is broken. You know what I mean? And I saw the same example. My wife worked in the legal profession, and it was the exact same story. Everyone spent the entire day sitting at their desk, pretending to work, working until midnight, and they didn't do anything. They had the appearance of working. I call it pretending to work, and it's so, especially in an office setting, there
Yeah.
is you get the most points for just being there, being a warm body, and if you're like, oh, yeah, Rich works until 8 p.m. every night. He's such a team player and he's really devoted to the cause. It doesn't matter if you spent, all day on Facebook. People just see that you're there and you're like, oh, they must be doing a lot of stuff. But the thing is, when you're self employed, there's no one watching you except, maybe you have a team. But if most people work remotely now, like when I sit down to work, I the I don't see anyone in here. Like there's no one watching me except me. So there is no incentive to pretend to work and to extend those hours. So you want to
Mhm.
spend the time doing the stuff that actually moves the needle, and then get out and recharge so that you can do really good work the
Mm.
following day, as opposed to just draining the battery down to zero, not realizing that the following day you are going to feel the impact of that. There's a
100%.
time for, like, listen, I've done all nighters. There is a time to hustle and there is a time to sprint. And sometimes it's like that. Sometimes it's monk mode. You know what I mean? And you just got to go in. But that's not normal. And that's not what the day to day should be. So that's my thought process on it. There's a ton of research behind how long we should be working, the most optimal way to work. Oh, I'll give you one other story that I think really hammers this home. Is there's this study about construction workers, and they basically compared two teams that were building similar buildings, basically the exact same building, and they were trying to figure out like what the most efficient amount of hours to work was. And this goes back to my point about working these long hours. So they had one crew of construction workers that worked a standard 40-hour week. And then they had another crew that was working an overtime week. So I think they were working somewhere between 50 and 60 hours a week. And what they found was the crew that worked overtime took an extra month or two to finish the construction project. It took them longer to work and finish the project than the people that were only working 40 hours a week on the building. And that tells you everything you need to know. You think, you know, oh, well, if I have an extra 20 hours a week, think about how much more I could get done. But you have to ask yourself, what is the quality of the work that you're doing? And so often when we're like brain dead and burnt out and fried, we don't have the opportunity to make like really strategic moves and think about big picture stuff that could save you a ton of work. Like if you're well rested and you realize this thing that I'm doing, for 2 hours a week, I don't have to do at all, or I
At
could
all.
just delegate it to someone. Like that saves you 100 hours a year to just not do it. And
100%, man.
once we're fried, like all we can really do is just like what's on the to-do list, what's in the inbox, what's directly in front of us. And there's less of that strategic thinking.
100%. I was laughing, man, because I've hired like a freelancer who does a lot of operations now within our business. And I was going through a lot of stuff, and he looked at them being like, you could just do all of this that way, and then you wouldn't have to do it at all. And I was just like, I was like, yeah, you're so fucking right. I was like, I've wasted like so many months doing it this way. He's like, just do it this way because it's fresh eyes, right? Just coming into this with a new perspective. And I was just
Yep.
like, yeah, you're just so right, you know. So understanding that. Before we finish up, I wanted to ask you just one thing that came into my head is that did you ever consider like the impact of like diet and like calories, food with productivity, deep work, and stuff like this? Because I think it's quite an interesting. Like you're a very healthy dude. I can see you're very active. Have you done any research into that element?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's cool. I have like a whole so if people always ask me, and I think this is really sad actually, that
Mm.
people will be like, "So what do you do with all of your free time?" And I'm like, dude, I have a million activities and interests that I'm trying to do. Like, I have no shortage. And if
Mm.
you need things to do, just let me know. There's plenty of stuff you can do outside of work. But one of my hobbies outside of work is I am definitely interested in like health, kind of like biohacking, nutrition, exercise, all that stuff. I've gone down the rabbit hole on a bunch of that, and it's definitely an interest of mine. The number one hack that works for me that I can recommend. And listen, everyone's different. If you don't feel you got to test stuff. But for me, I do not eat until I'm done work, basically. So I do my morning work routine on an average day. I'll probably start around like wake up, meditate, get in front of the desk around 7:30, 8, and I'll do my work session, and then I will break that fast with my first meal of the day after I'm done with work. If I need to work longer than that, I try to stay away from carbs in the morning. I find that like with the mental clarity, it doesn't help. So I'm better off eating a kind of high protein, high fat breakfast. I'm not keto or anything like that, but for work and for focus and like removing brain fog and stuff like that, I find that I move much faster, either fasted or with high protein, high fat.
Super interesting, man. Because of course, you could be on a spectrum of not eating enough, and then you're going to be kind of groggy, irritated, and then there's too much on the spectrum, then whereby you're completely overwhelmed by carbs, right? Because like
You're
for me
asleep.
as yeah, for me as a bodybuilder, that's a concern, right? Because I might be eating too low in calories, which means I can't really focus for too long. And then on the other spectrum, when I'm trying to put on some more size, as a result as well, it's like it's very difficult to find that balance as a bodybuilder, right? It's like where is the optimal level of food, or just where is a decent level of food per concentration? Because it's a bit different. But that's very interesting though, because it's just completely nuanced, right? Depends on the individual, depends on their time. So Rich, I want to say a massive, massive thank you, man. I really, really mean it. I really do appreciate this. It was a fantastic
No
session.
problem. Yeah,
And
it's great.
again, anything I can do for you in the future, I would love to go deeper. There's actually multiple different areas I'd love to go into, even like on sleep, different areas on recovery as well, how you're doing this. So, again, my door is always open, and if I can ever be of help for you, I'd like to say, I'd love to help out.
Sweet. Sounds like a plan, man. Great to have you.